I never imagined my home, the place where I had poured every ounce of my love, sweat, and memories, suddenly felt like a battlefield. It started innocently enough, a wedding, a new chapter for my son. But I should have seen the signs, the way Sophie, my daughter-in-law, glided into our lives with that smile, that perfect act. I didn't want to believe it, didn't want to see what was right in front of me. She wasn't there to celebrate, to bask in the joy of her new marriage. No, Sophie had other plans. Plans to take away everything I owned. She came with documents, with a notary, all neatly prepared as though this was a business deal, not a marriage. And that's when I realized the truth. She wasn't here for Ethan. She was here for something much more valuable. To steal my home. I thought I knew my son, but I had no idea that he was in together with her plans. They thought I was weak, that I'll hand over everything I've worked for without a fight. But they have no idea what's coming. This isn't just about a house. It's about everything I hold dear. The storm is just beginning. And when it hits, they'll wish they had never underestimated me. Before we continue with the story, comment where you are watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel to get more uplifting stories about women that have been betrayed and mistreated by family members, but still got back on their feet with a happy ending. Now back to our story. The rain hit the windows with a steady, rhythmic force, as if the sky itself was trying to drown out whatever was about to unfold inside my home. I heard a knock at the door, followed by the sound of footsteps on the porch. I wasn't expecting company, especially not tonight. The storm outside made everything feel distant, isolated, and I wanted nothing more than to remain tucked away in my sanctuary. But there they were. I opened the door to find my son, Ethan, standing in the doorway, drenched from the downpour. His eyes were distant, cold, and it struck me immediately that something was wrong. Behind him stood Sophie, his new wife. The smile on her face was so polished, so perfect, that it almost made me shiver. It was the kind of smile people wear when they've learned how to manipulate their way into situations. I didn't trust it. I didn't trust her. Sophie was holding an umbrella, but the way she held it seemed almost deliberate, as if she was marking her territory the moment she stepped inside. She looked at me with that same smile, the kind that felt more like a strategy than a greeting. Ethan stepped aside, barely meeting my eyes. He had always been my son, but in that moment he looked like a stranger. The boy I had raised was no longer standing in front of me. "Hi, Helen," Sophie greeted me, her voice sweet, too sweet. "We're here to finalize a few things with the house." The storm howled in the background, but her voice was calm, too controlled for my liking. It felt as though she were stepping into my home, not as a guest, but as if she had already claimed it. "I brought a notary with me so we can handle it all today," Sophie continued, brushing past me without waiting for an invitation. I didn't respond right away. I stood in the doorway, my heart pounding in my chest as I watched them both step inside. The cold air seemed to follow them, and a sense of dread crept up my spine. Something was terribly wrong. They weren't here for a friendly visit. They weren't here to finalize anything. No, they were here to take something that meant everything to me. I let them inside, stepping aside as they made their way into the living room. I could hear Sophie's high heels clicking on the wooden floor, the sound echoing in the silence like a warning bell. She was making herself at home, like this place was hers to command, to control. Ethan followed, his head lowered, his steps slower, quieter. I could barely hear him, but his presence was undeniable. It was like he had been reduced to nothing more than an accessory to Sophie's plan. He didn't look at me, didn't speak. Sophie moved toward the table, her movements fluid, practiced. She started pulling papers from her bag, laying them down with deliberate care, each page adding weight to the air. The deed to my home was placed at the top of the pile, and when I saw it, a cold wave washed over me. My heart sank. I knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't about paperwork or a simple discussion. It was about taking something from me. Something I had worked my entire life to protect. She looked up at me, her eyes calculating, her smile still firmly in place. "It's all pretty standard," Sophie said, her tone as cold and calculated as the storm raging outside. "It's better to handle these things now, while the market is still good." I couldn't bring myself to speak immediately. I couldn't let her see the storm that was brewing inside me, the anger, the betrayal. Instead, I walked over to the table, my hands steady despite the rage inside. I picked up the top sheet, scanned it quickly. My name was typed at the top, but there was something wrong with the next line. It was a power of attorney clause. A clause that wasn't authorized by me. Froze. My signature was forged. I looked up at Ethan. He was standing there, silent, his eyes glued to the floor. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me, suffocating me. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He knew what was happening, and he wasn't willing to stand up to Sophie. He wasn't willing to defend me. I didn't authorize this, I said softly, my voice quiet but firm, a stark contrast to the storm outside. Sophie didn't flinch. Her smile wavered for a brief second, but she quickly recovered, smoothing her hair back as if she were brushing away the discomfort. Well, not yet, she said smoothly, her voice still sweet, too sweet. But this is just the first step. We thought we'd get everything ready today, make it easier on you. I didn't blink, didn't flinch. I took a step back, folding the papers neatly in front of her and pushing them toward her across the table. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. Is this why you married him? I asked, my voice low but steady, not giving in to the rising anger. For this house. Her expression shifted slightly. I could see the irritation in her eyes, the flicker of emotion she couldn't quite hide. But I didn't look away. I wasn't backing down. Ethan's voice broke the silence, barely above a whisper. We thought it was time, Mom. You've got so much space here and you deserve to be comfortable. I finished his sentence for him. And you want it. Sophie's gaze hardened, but she kept her voice sweet, the mask slipping just a little. You're making this more difficult than it has to be. I turned, walking toward the kitchen. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The storm inside me was enough. No, I said calmly. I'm just not making it easy. I let them sit there waiting, expecting me to break. Beg. To sign away everything I had worked for. They thought I was weak, that I was an easy target. But I wasn't going to play along. Instead, I took my time, boiling water for tea, making sure they could feel the tension building in the room. Let them feel the storm coming. This wasn't the ambush they thought it was. Sophie and Ethan had underestimated me. They thought I would be a passive victim, an old woman who wouldn't fight back. But they didn't know me. They didn't know what I was capable of when pushed to the edge. This house was my legacy. It wasn't just a property to me. It was everything I had built with my own hands. And I would not let them take it from me without a fight. I wasn't going to give in. Not this time. A week earlier, I had stood in the back of a crowded reception hall, watching my son, Ethan, exchange vows with a woman I wanted to believe was kind, genuine, and perfect for him. The soft music playing in the background, the smiles, the well wishes. It was all so dreamlike, so beautiful. For a moment I let myself believe it. I let myself believe that Sophie, his new wife, was the one who would make him happy, the one who would care for him as much as I had. Sophie had that radiant glow about her, the kind that tricked you into thinking sweetness and goodness came packaged together. She was warm, charming, and always ready with a laugh. That's what I saw at first, and it was easy to fall for. I watched them together, and I thought about how lucky my son was to find someone who seemed to care so much. I watched her hands gently rest on his arm, her eyes soft as she looked at him. Felt right. I could see the love between them, and in my heart, I wished them nothing but happiness. But now, as I stood in my living room, feeling the cold weight of the present, I realized just how easily I had been fooled. The image of Sophie I had painted in my mind no longer seemed to match the woman standing before me today. I should have known, should have seen through the layers of charm and sweetness. But in that moment 3 days ago, I was too caught up in the joy of the occasion to pay attention to the details. Now, looking back, the signs were there, the subtle hints, the little things I had dismissed. I remember when Sophie's parents arrived at the reception, the last guests to arrive, fashionably late as usual. Her mother, a woman who spoke with an air of superiority, immediately started asking about the house. Questions like, how many square feet is it? And what's the neighborhood like? Seemed harmless at first, but the way she asked them raised something in my gut. It wasn't curiosity. It was something else, something colder. I brushed it off at the time, thinking it was just small talk, but it didn't sit well with me now. Her father, on the other hand, wandered around taking pictures of the entire house. I saw him lingering near the walls, snapping photos of rooms I had lived in for decades. I'd always opened my home to people, but there was something unnerving about the way he observed everything. It wasn't like a guest appreciating the surroundings. It was more like a property appraisal. It was as if they were seeing the house through the eyes of someone looking to buy, not someone who was here to celebrate my son's wedding. When I realized this, it felt like the ground was being pulled out from under me. Sophie's family wasn't here just to be a part of the celebration. No, they were already sizing up the house, already planning how to take what was mine. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Sophie, with all her sweetness, had carefully orchestrated her way into my life, into my son's life. I was blinded by her kindness, or at least what I believed was kindness. She had wormed her way into his heart, but she had her eyes set on something much bigger than just a marriage. I felt a pang of guilt for thinking this way. I had always wanted Ethan to be happy, to find someone who loved him. I wanted to believe that Sophie was the one for him. But in that moment, the pieces began to fit together in a way that made my stomach churn. The questions, the photos, the way Sophie's family acted, they had already begun treating my home like a commodity. It was as if they had no idea how much this house meant to me, to my late husband, and to Ethan's childhood. To them, it was just property, something to be sold for a profit, a piece of real estate to be flipped for their gain. And it wasn't just Sophie's family. It was Ethan too, or at least the version of him that stood next to her now. My son, who had always been so close to me, seemed distant in a way I couldn't explain. As I watched him with Sophie, I realized that he wasn't just marrying her out of love. There was something else at play. Sophie wasn't just a woman he wanted to share his life with. She was a means to an end. The end being my home. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The storm brewing inside me now made sense. It wasn't just the rain outside that had me on edge. It was the storm that had quietly been building in my own family, in my own home, and I had failed to see it. The house felt quieter now, but there was an unsettling stillness that clung to every corner. I had already seen what Sophie and Ethan were capable of. But that night, as I sat in the dimly lit kitchen, I overheard them in the next room. Their voices drifted through the walls, low but clear, like a secret being whispered directly into my ear. "I think it's time," Sophie said, her voice smooth, almost too calm. "We can unlock the house now, make the most of it. You know how much we can get for it. With the market heating up, it's the perfect moment." Froze. The words hit me like ice water. Unlocking the house. Those words, so casually spoken, confirmed everything I had feared. It wasn't just about love. It wasn't about a future with Ethan. It was about taking my home, using it for profit, and turning it into something else entirely. Sophie's words were precise, calculated, and cold. Ethan's reply followed, quieter, but just as telling. "I know. But Mom, she's going to be difficult. We'll need to handle this delicately." I couldn't help the anger that surged within me. How dare they? How dare they talk about my home, my sanctuary, like it was some commodity to be sold? How dare Sophie pretend to be a part of this family when all she wanted was to take what belonged to me? I clenched my fists, trying to steady myself. I couldn't let them know I had heard anything. I had to be calm, measured, and strategic. I had to protect what was mine. The next morning I took action. I had an old friend, Jack, who was a lawyer, sharp, discreet, and always on my side. He had helped me handle my late husband's estate, and I trusted him. I called him that very morning, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. I explained everything, every detail I had heard, every moment of suspicion I had been building. "Jack," I said, "I need you to help me secure my home. I need to make sure it's protected, legally and financially. They think they can take it from me, but I won't let them." "Of course, Helen," he said without hesitation. "I'll make sure everything is locked down. You'll be safe." With Jack's help, I began to make changes. I secretly updated my will, adjusting the trust to ensure that if anything happened to me, my home would be protected from Sophie and Ethan's grasp. I made sure it would go to someone who would respect it, someone who wouldn't treat it as a prize to be won. My late husband had always said that the house was more than just bricks and mortar. It was a legacy, and I would be damned if anyone, especially Sophie, was going to take it away. But that wasn't enough. I had to gather evidence, concrete proof of Sophie's manipulation. I wasn't going to let her walk away without consequences. I hired a private investigator, Ruben, someone with a reputation for getting to the truth. I told him everything I had suspected. I needed to know exactly what Sophie had been up to, who she had been talking to, and what she had planned. "I'll keep an eye on her, Helen," Ruben assured me. "I'll get the proof you need." Every move I made was quiet, deliberate. I wasn't about to let them win. Not this time. I would make sure my home, my legacy, was safe no matter what it took. The weeks that followed were a blur of quiet preparation. Sophie and Ethan came and went, their visits more frequent, their faces wearing that same false sweetness. They still believed I hadn't caught on to their plans, that I was just an old woman who didn't understand the game they were playing. Little did they know, I had already set the pieces in motion to protect my home and my future. I remained calm, composed, giving nothing away. My interactions with them were polite, even if my mind was always 3 steps ahead. Every conversation, every gesture from Sophie, was quietly analyzed. I watched her, listened to the way she spoke, the way she moved through my home as if she already owned it. But I said nothing. I didn't flinch. I had learned long ago that silence could be a weapon just as powerful as words. I kept my distance, my feelings hidden. I had been through too much to let them see the storm raging beneath the surface. There were days when I felt like I was drowning in the lies they told, in the manipulation they masked as affection. I could see right through them, but I couldn't act too soon. I needed to gather more proof, make sure every step I took was legally sound. I followed their movements as best I could. Sophie's actions became more brazen with each passing day. I noticed her slipping away more often, having hushed conversations with someone, most likely the same real estate agent she'd been in contact with before. Ethan, always the quiet one, seemed more and more like a puppet on a string. It was clear to me that he was no longer the person I had raised. He was no longer my son, at least not in the way he had been before. He was under Sophie's thumb, and that, more than anything, broke my heart. Through it all, I stayed focused on my goal. Jack, my lawyer, helped me make sure the legal documents I had put in place were watertight. The trust one had set up, the will I had carefully amended, everything was in place. I knew that if I had to fight, I would have the law on my side. Reuben, the investigator, continued his work, gathering more evidence of Sophie's schemes. He uncovered phone records, emails, and meetings, all confirming my worst fears. Sophie had been making moves behind the scenes, trying to position herself as the rightful heir to my home. But she didn't know that I was ready for her. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction as the final pieces clicked into place. They thought they were playing me, but they had no idea what was coming. I had played this game before, and I was better at it than they could ever imagine. I wasn't the weak woman they thought I was. I had been through far worse than this, and I wasn't going to let them take what was mine. The doorbell rang just as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the floor of the hallway. I knew exactly who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Sophie and Ethan. They hadn't come in a while, and I could feel the tension building like an impending storm. I had spent weeks preparing, gathering everything I needed to protect what was mine. But I knew deep down that they weren't going to give up easily. They would keep coming back until they thought they could wear me down. I opened the door slowly, my hand steady on the handle, and there they were. Sophie, her polished smile still in place, and Ethan standing quietly behind her. They looked more confident than ever, as if they believed I would finally give in. Sophie spoke first, her voice as sweet as it had always been, but this time I didn't let it fool me. "Hi, Helen," she greeted me, her tone too smooth, too practiced. "We're just here to finalize everything. We brought the notary this time so we can get this done quickly." Behind her, I saw the notary standing with a stack of papers in his hands. His expression neutral, as if he were just doing his job. But I knew better. They had come prepared to make their final move. I stepped aside, letting them in, but the moment they crossed the threshold, I felt a surge of power. This wasn't just another confrontation. This was the final act, the moment when I would put an end to their scheme once and for all. Sophie's heels clicked on the hardwood floor as she made her way to the table, but this time I didn't follow her. I didn't feel the need to. I knew what I had to do. She spread the papers out in front of me, her smile widening as if she thought I would fold under the pressure. "Everything's ready, Helen. All you need to do is sign and we'll be done. It'll be over, and you won't have to worry about it anymore." Her words, laced with false sweetness, did nothing to shake me. I knew what she was trying to do. She thought I was weak, that I would be too tired to fight back. But she didn't know me. She didn't know what I was capable of when I was pushed to my limit. Without saying a word, I reached into the drawer next to me and pulled out the court order. I could feel their eyes on me, but I didn't look at them. I didn't need to. I was in control now. I handed the court order to Sophie, watching as her face drained of color. Her smile faltered for a split second, and in that moment, I knew she realized her plan had failed. She looked at the paper, then back at me, her voice shaking as she tried to recover. What is this? It's over, I said, my voice firm, unwavering. You've been exposed. Everything you've been trying to do is over. Ethan didn't say anything. He just stood there, his eyes avoiding mine, as if he knew this was the end. Sophie, however, tried to hold on, tried to convince me that it wasn't too late. But I wasn't listening anymore. I didn't need her words. I had already won. I walked to the door, my steps slow and deliberate. I could feel the weight of everything shifting, the power finally back in my hands. I locked the door behind me, the sound echoing in the stillness of the room. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about getting back at them for what they had tried to do. It was about standing my ground. It was about protecting my home, my legacy. And as I stood there, knowing they had no way out, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had done what needed to be done. My home was mine, and nothing would take that away from me.